Dear friends, welcome to another hour and a half of living with Christ, where we seek to make real for ourselves our relationship with Jesus Christ in his new revelation. We can't remind ourselves enough that this is also part of the purpose of why Rudolf Steiner was inspired to bring the Christian community into existence. In a couple of weeks, I'll be at Harvard to give a talk on Rudolf Steiner and the Christian community, why he felt strongly that there needed to be a new, renewed expression of Christian worship. And it was very important for him that even in the religious sphere, we begin to recognize that the second coming is actually happening now. That Christ is appearing in a new form now, and it's imperative that human I beings, human egos, recognize him, have some sort of experience of him as a real encounter. That we can begin to experience him bit by bit through the priest at the altar. Rudolf Steiner says is the purpose, fundamental purpose of this movement. He even goes so far to say, quite shockingly perhaps to some, that the consecration of the human being is a path of knowledge, a path of knowing. And that the apocalypse, that which is revealed through Jesus Christ, the apocalypse of St. John, is the content of that knowledge. The consecration is the path, the apocalypse is the content. Amazing. This all to say, this is just to remind us that, friends, we are on a mind path. Yes, of course, the heart is involved. Yes, the will is involved. Yes, the whole human is involved. But it's important for us to remember, especially in the context of the crowning of thorns, something that comes into our head sphere and pierces our head, that this is a path of the mind. The fundamental transformative verb that we use is metanoia, as you know, and that means the transformation of the mind, the changing of the mind and the heart, because of course the heart thinks. So this is what we want to continue with today. And last time we began the mystery of the crowning of thorns in a way that speaks to this mind transformation. And it's important to remember that the Christian community is also trying to revive the original Christianity, the original form of worship. That's why I called it last time Orthodox. And some of you were quite shocked by that. I got some emails and some phone calls. But Orthodox in the religious context, if you look it up in the dictionary, says Orthodox is something that is of the original understanding. And Rudolf Steiner told the priests, you have to connect to the original church fathers and renew that original understanding of Christianity for today. That's why I call it a kind of refined orthodoxy, new orthodoxy. It's the ancient original form of Christianity brought into the now. But the other aspect that's very important, the other picture, is this picture that The first gift to humanity, as Rudolf Steiner describes it, is the fall. The fall is a gift. Very much so that we could find freedom. But this fall happened as an event of knowledge. Let's not forget. The fall is an event of knowledge. The human being touched a knowledge source. Of good and evil. A knowledge of good and evil. And that's what changed their reality. Very important to remember it like that. And the consequence of touching that knowledge source was the suffering under the thorns, as described by God to Adam. And so we can see here in the crowning of the thorns, I drew a kind of picture of a face here with a crown of thorns up here, that Christ himself is taking on that karma that was begun by Adam and Eve as a first event of knowledge. He's taking that on now, and through that karma, giving birth, piercing the dead place, the head, the skull, which in Aramaic means Golgotha, piercing the dead place to give birth to a new knowledge event. The Christ mind, the Holy Spirit. In a way, you could even go so far as to say the tree, the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of knowledge of good and evil that was shaped and inspired by the serpent has been transformed into a new tree that looks like the cross. And from the cross flows a new mind, a new confession, a new faith. That ring any bells? Thus thinks in us a new mind. But first that mind has to be pierced because there's an old Adam mind in it. And it has to be changed. So Tertullian and Cyril of Alexandria, these original fathers, they also saw Christ taking up the crown of thorns as a redemption of the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. As a fulfilling and a renewing and a transforming of the karma that was laid upon Adam by God. You will suffer under the thorns. He took that up and made it into something of a blessing, something of the true human being. A pierced mind that opens to the new mind. And last time we didn't get all the way through the 5 thorns that I wanted to describe. And I'll just remind us briefly of the first 3, and then we'll focus on the last 2. This picture, though, is a picture of a head, a countenance. Is it Christ? Could be. Is it you? Could be. It's definitely not me because it's got hair. I'm glad you still laugh at my joke. And here's the crown of thorns. Remember, Luther said, why do we expect a crown of roses when the true human being itself received a crown of thorns? That speaks also to the expectations in our fallen minds that we hold. Those too have to be rooted out, conformed to the cross, made into vessels of the Holy Spirit. So this first mind of the serpent, let's call it that lives in our head, is I am sufficient. Remember that first one we talked about? I am sufficient. I need no one. The whore of Babylon in the book of Revelation, the dark queen that lives in all of us, says, there is no one above me. I need nothing greater than myself. We know that voice. If anyone's going to do it, I'm going to have to do it. This lives in us. And we talked about how the first thorn, and I'll use this color, shoo, pierces that and brings us a new mind that is the mind of Christ. Christ himself doesn't even say, I am sufficient. Babylon says that. Christ says what? I only do what I see the Father doing. I only think what I see the Father thinking. In the consecration of the human being, we say, as he receives it from the Father, makes it whole through the Spirit. He's constantly receiving life from the Father. He's in a divine interrelationship always. Why would we expect, if Christ is not even totally independent, why would we expect ourselves as an ideal to be that? We're called to constantly live in the consciousness that Christ is carrying us, walking with us, bestowing his life into our life, strengthening us. The second thorn. So, I guess I should write that I am carried as the first. I am carried. That's the first new mind. The second one is the old mind is the fundamental problem is suffering, evil, and death. This is what also the Buddha discovered, did he not? The Buddha discovered this is a fundamental problem, suffering, death, and illness, and the evil that keeps us attached. And the Buddha discovered that there's a way out of that ignorance. There's a way out of that problem. And that's a path. It's very interesting, though, if you study Buddhism, that at the time of Golgotha, the Buddhism impulse, the whole impulse of Buddhism went through a massive transformation from Theravada Buddhism to Mahayana Buddhism. Theravada is the individual's path to liberation. Mahayana, at the time of Christ, came in where the individual renounces nirvana, renounces leaving the prison of suffering, death, and illness, and returns compassionately uniting with all suffering until all of humanity is redeemed. Does that sound like any being you know?
Sounds like Christianity.
It sounds like Christianity. It is a Christ impulse to say, I'm going to make my home in the place of evil, suffering, and death. That Mahayana shift would not have been possible unless Christ had made his home in suffering, death, and illness. That's why all of a sudden there can be a new mind that the fundamental problem is not those things as it was rightfully at the time of Buddha. The fundamental problem is destructive death that hasn't become cruciform death. Mere suffering that hasn't become a holy wound. Evil that I'm not walking with, confessing to Christ so that he can lift the might of the adversary from me, but not the evil one. Evil is not a problem. It's a path with Christ. That's why he's standing in the middle of evil in the statue. The problem is the might of the adversary. And when we can know Christ in the midst of evil, he lifts the might from us. You see the distinction. So the piercing, the new mind, is that I'm able to see death, evil, suffering, illness as an opportunity to get closer to God, not as something that I have to escape from. This is the pattern of Christ. This is the mind of Christ. He discovers and finds communion with the Father in the presence of death, illness, darkness, evil. That's the pattern of mind that we're working toward. In this context, we mentioned also Rudolf Steiner describing to the priests the idea that we must learn to befriend death, to feel death. If many of you have experienced losing a loved one, it's always astounding to me when I have had the blessing of being able to do a funeral with a family. It's always astounding to me to see how the death of a loved one awakens a new appreciation for life. That even though it's painful and difficult, death has a way of awakening us to what is really important, making us ask the question, what am I really doing with my life? Am I really doing meaningful things? What do I really love? This is a powerful thing that death can do, and we can learn to make it our friend. With illness too, Ilse says. It's not the Christ mind to just be cured from an illness. That's the mind in you that just wants to be pain-free, which I have as well. The Christ mind is not satisfied with just being cured. The Christ mind wants in us something like Lazarus, who went through an illness, and that illness was not unto death, and it was actually an initiation where he found his true I in the being of Jesus Christ, saying to him face to face, I am your life. That was the gift of his illness. I am your life. Your life and your resurrection is actually not in you. It's given to you through me. That's the initiation of Lazarus. The third mind that needs to be pierced by one of these thorns. So the second mind says it's really cruciformity, that all the fundamental problem is that evil needs to become cruciform, that illness needs to become cruciform, that death itself needs to become a place where I can find a deeper relationship with God. The third picture was, this shouldn't be. Oh, this is so good because we all have it so strongly. What's happening now shouldn't be. The government shouldn't be corrupt. Vaccines shouldn't be. Or they, whatever. Could be anything. This problem in my marriage, these kids I have shouldn't be like this. The Waldorf school shouldn't be like this. There shouldn't be darkness. I remember a profound picture. I won't mention the name, a dear soul, I love her dearly. In one of our affiliate congregations, I came and we were just starting it. And we were about to do the children's service, and I was putting up the different things in the altar, and I put up the picture, our picture that we have, and it was the Redemptor and Grunewald's crucifixion, which is the classic. This is what we started with in the Christian community. Rudolf Steiner gave that indication. And this dear, dear mother came up to me and said, Jonah, can't you just take down the crucifixion? I don't want my kids to be exposed. That shouldn't be. I can understand that. I can understand that. Let's just focus on the isn't the Christian community about focusing on the resurrection and not the crucifixion? Let's just do that. Yeah. So what shouldn't be can be very strong in us, where we just want what is ideal and comfortable and bright.
Resurrection is only possible because of the crucifixion.
And Irene says the resurrection is only possible because of the crucifixion. Yes, that you just discerned in your mind is the Christ mind. Yeah? So this is another reason why we're practicing this, is we want to learn to build an organ of thinking. Golgotha is the reason why Michael is guiding us to a higher divining of the deed of life and death on Golgotha, a higher divining, is to train a new mind. The Lord of cosmic intelligence wants our intelligence to be shaped by Golgotha, so that thus thinks in us Christ's suffering and death, his resurrection, his revelation. So this darkness shouldn't be, must be counterbalanced or transformed or composted, as someone else said, beautiful image. The dung of this thought is composted by the warmth and light of Christ's thought, which is we're meant to shine in the darkness. You see the difference there? Get the darkness away. There's a mind shift that takes place. If I radically, the darkness should be there, and I'm meant to shine in it. It's a radically different thing. I remember one of our dear members in consultation was suffering with extreme arthritis, had the mind, I must heal my arthritis, and was feeling incredibly frustrated and angry that she was not spiritual enough to attain that power to heal herself. But in the course of the consultation, she was able to be inspired to change her mind that, oh, maybe it's not my job to take away that darkness, but to walk with and shine in that darkness. And that became her prayer. Help me stand at peace with this dark arthritis. And in one of the more miraculous experiences, the next day her countenance was changed. It wasn't dark, it was shining, even though the arthritis was still there. There are many darknesses that are cosmically and karmically ordained. That is not our task to change. The fact that we're going through an electrical onslaught flood where everything is becoming screen-based and 5G orientated. This, Rudolf Steiner says, is our destiny. The earth itself is becoming an electrical apparatus. We're called to shine in that. The consecration of the human being, the foundation stone meditation, anthroposophy is meant to enliven this part of us so that we can shine in that darkness, not get rid of it. That's also why I want to do this kind of work online. Not because I want to bless the online sphere necessarily, but I want to practice what is it like to shine in the darkness. How can we cultivate that strength? The fourth thorn that must pierce our mind, touch in on these profound assumptions that we've developed through the tree of knowledge of good and evil led by Lucifer, I call I am strong. I am strong. That sounds good. I want to be strong. We all want to be strong. In fact, it's astounding to me that very often in my experience with consultations, the hardest point to budge is where someone feels like I have to maintain this to be strong. I want to be strong. I don't want to be weak. It's, I would say, one of the most fundamental core feeling thinkings in us that we want to be strong above all else. Because to be weak is the worst. To be a doormat is the worst, of course. These are also true. And this is why this is probably one of the most challenging parts of the crowning of thorns, the most challenging parts of the Christ mind, which Paul so beautifully, the apostle, illustrates in the second letter to the Corinthians in chapter 12, where this thorn that he prays to be removed 3 times weakens him profoundly. But Christ does not remove the thorn or the weakness, but says to him, as you may remember, let my grace be sufficient for you. For my strength is made perfect, teleos, in weakness. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Let the grace that is flowing from me to you through this thorn, through this weakness, be sufficient for you. In other words, find it, be nourished by it. For Christ's strength is actually found through crucifixion, through your weakness. It's a kind of new strength, but a cruciform strength. A strength that doesn't seem like strength at first. It's being pierced, recognizing a kind of weakness that becomes a doorway for deeper strength. deeper trust, deeper faith, deeper love. So this fourth thorn is, how did I put it here? Oh, yeah. True strength is made perfect in weakness. Now, this doesn't just mean glorifying my weaknesses. Oh, I'm so weak. Oh, I'm so weak. I'm so forgetful. I'm such an idiot. No, no. That's not what he means. It means, am I finding God's strength in and through the doorway of one of my weaknesses? That's when I feel strong through a weakness. One of the pictures of the crowning of thorns comes from Julian of Norwich. Buddy and Sarah gave me a little writing on her where she experienced Christ with the crown of thorns and experienced through that image that he was bearing the sins of all of humanity. Another meaning. So, from that perspective, Christ becomes weak. He takes on literally all of humanity's weaknesses. Why? Because he sees the Father doing it. And through that, he becomes more in the image of the Father and receives more of the grace of the Father. So if you take on, let's say, someone's weaknesses, if you take up the sins and forgive and walk with the sins of your partner or your children or your family or your congregation, and you do that because you want to be good, that's not enough. Taking up a weakness has to become a doorway to a deeper knowing of God. It's not that I take up the sins of this congregation that I'm included in just because I want to be better. It's because I see Christ doing it and it's so beautiful, so loving, so true. I receive that love and truth and goodness through him, from him, into that activity. It has to be inspired by love, beauty, and goodness, not just my desire to be better. It has to pierce me. And through that piercing, become a doorway for God's being. What, you might ask, is the fifth? My eye is in me. This is the one of the most difficult ones. This has to do with our sense of self. Rudolf Steiner says in the sixth post-Atlantean epoch, if you know your anthroposophical epochs, that's the next one, or in the fifth. He says in that time, more and more human beings won't experience themselves, in their own skin. They will experience their self more and more coming to them from other people. Is anyone terrified now? No, I am. You're going to feel yourself given to you by other people. Imagine if you're not really a forgiving type. Imagine if you still have lots of blame toward other people. This will be very painful.
experience that already.
We experience this already.
Certainly a beginning of that.
There's a beginning of that already. We're in the training for that. That's why blame, hate, these things are the most difficult, unhealthy, hardened hearts. That's the most difficult thing for the self right now, because we want to gradually learn how to feel myself comes to me from another. This is what's happening in the consecration. This is exactly why the priest comes to you and bestows upon you your full self. We're meant to start to feel me alone is not my full I. I'm only an I when I feel my I being bestowed upon me as a gift. Then I can slowly, with Christ, start to overcome another thing that happened at the fall, which was the gift of egotism from Lucifer in my I. Egotism fundamentally feels myself is here and everything else around me is other. We begin to transform that illness, that fallen mind, the more we start to see in Karen the Christ. And not just the Christ, but that's actually the one who holds my true self and bestows it upon me. So maybe I perceive the other day I met with a congregant, not to be named, who went through a profound process of forgiving someone that betrayed them in this larger community. And I saw in her awaken the one in whom says, do what you must. I find you must do this because it has deep meaning. Who forgives the betrayer. I saw that light up in this person. And in that moment, I started to feel that is also my true self. That's the one that I love, that I find expresses my deepest being. So in that moment, then it's other, it's also part of her deed, but it also reveals to be me in Christ. Christ is the one who overcomes betrayal and forgives. This experience that my I is both in me and given to me by Christ. My true I is in Christ, and when he appears, myself is revealed with him. Colossians 3:3, Paul the Apostle. When he appears, when Christ appears, my true self appears with him. Your priests every Wednesday have a particular meditation given to them by Steiner. And without revealing the meditation, the gist of it is, when I look into myself, I search for the Spirit. When I look into my darkness, I search for myself, but I don't find it there. I don't find it. And then all of a sudden, we must stand before the cross on Golgotha. From the cross, there shines out the light of the Spirit. May my heart carry that light. This mirrors Rudolf Steiner's own personal initiation, where he looked in his mid-30s, he went on a fundamental search inwardly for the truest self and couldn't find it in himself. And then he was gifted with his initiation experience, standing before the mystery of Golgotha in a festival of knowledge, he describes in his autobiography. Standing before the mystery of Golgotha, Jesus Christ, crucified and risen, in a festival of knowing. Remember, this path is a path of a new mind. And that knowing, then after this experience, he pours out all of anthroposophy, almost beginning with Christianity as mystical fact, where he describes in chapter 11, which the students know well now, that in this being, this true human being, this Jesus Christ who went through death and rose from the grave, is the fullness of the mysteries and my true self. And he will bestow it, appear and bestow it upon me. He wrote that because he knew that. He wrote that because he lived that. Jesus Christ is a reality who bears within him a gift of the self so that we can overcome pride. Imagine if you had to develop yourself fully. You'd be quite proud at the end of that. What can heal that pride? Only one thing: if the self is a gift. So the fifth thorn is the gifted self, the true I in Christ is bestowed. Bestowed. It's also very important to remember this in the context of Advent. We just celebrated the first Advent Sunday, and it's very interesting that in our liturgy, nothing of Mary or the baby Jesus is mentioned outwardly, but what's described is that the soul opens up and becomes a kind of stage upon which another being is speaking into us. And this speaking, this soft word that comes from the future but enters softly into the present, awakens a picture. A picture in us that is not us, but God. And this picture is the picture of the death, resurrection of Christ. And it's described as a become. A become. It's not become min. It's an objective thing, so to speak. A become. It's like a little baby in the womb of your soul. And this new being has a mind. This mind of becoming doesn't think, oh, I'm going to become more buff by going across the street to LA Fitness. That's not the becoming that it's talking about. The becoming is more and more in the image and likeness of Jesus Christ with the holy wounds. The one who shelters and redeems our errors it's described, full of mercy in his own divine soul. To become in this new mind means to learn to shelter errors. How is that going? When you see your own errors, do you shelter them? How about other people's? That's a tremendous ideal. That's the becoming one. It doesn't describe the one that masters the universe and manifests everything that I want. No, that's a different mind. Friends, we need to remember all initiation processes, all spiritual paths are actually teaching a new mind. The question is, which being do you want thinking in you? Bob Dylan said you have to worship someone. Either you worship the devil or you worship God. But you've got to worship someone. This is true for the human being. Even if we don't think we're devoted to something, there's always a kind of idealism that we're taking up. That's a form of worship. What mind are you allowing to shape your mind? So here, friends, this is not just an abstraction. I didn't just create these or make these up. These are actually a part of Christ's mind, these 5 steps, and they're deeply linked to the inner exercise I want to do with you now at the end. And we've done that before. You remember from Steiner this picture of Christ standing before us and speaking into our hearts 5 sentences, 5 words of life, 5 qualities of a new mind. And each one of these is connected to one of those mantric words. Let your soul be carried by my strong power. This addresses the first thorn. I am with you in your relationship with the adversary, in your illnesses, in your death, in your sufferings. I'm walking with you, helping you with them, helping you to make them cruciform. I am with you. I am in you is the next one. I am in you. This is, can we learn to shine in the darkness? Christ in you, shining out into the darkness. You are the light of the world. The world is Ahriman's realm. You're meant to shine in Ahriman's realm. Christ, I am with you, he says. I am in you. That's the shining one, is I am in you, shining out. I am for you. True strength. Even in the karmic blows of destiny that I send to you as Lord of Karma, those thorns are there for you to find how the grace of God can flow through that thorn, become a window for new strength, because God's strength is made perfect in weakness. I am for you, even if it doesn't look like I'm for you. I am your true I is the final mantric word. I am your true I. And we're meant to hear that from this being standing in the spirit before us, like Lazarus, who in this encounter, Christ says, I am your life and your resurrection. I am your true I. I bestow it upon you. So in the last minutes here, let's do this meditative prayer. Many of you have done it before. And if there's still a bit of time, I'll read this one last story. So turn slightly away from the screen. And come into a silence. And try to picture for yourself now Christ. Even if you can't picture him, try to feel him before you. And he speaks into your heart. Let your soul be carried by my strong power. Let your soul be carried by my strong power. I am with you. I am in you. I am for you. I am your true I. Good. Slowly come back. And I think I'll leave the story perhaps for next time, or if there's time, I'd like to open it up now. If there are any questions or comments or insights. Yeah, Irene, you're first.
A group of us last night watched an interview by an incredibly uh, intelligent, devoted human being, Diana Beresford Kroger. She has a lot of Druid wisdom. And she's been around for a long, long time. She has worked with scientists, doctors, philosophers, so on and so forth, and has truly worked with the earth, wanting to heal it so that the earth does not die. And she has made incredible gains. But it occurred to me last night when she kept saying, we can do it. We can do it. Like the mantra, do it. It can be done. And she's also has a lot of a really strong recognition that science cannot exist without the divinity. Okay. And yet, and all of that, not once would she state, perhaps this is not meant for us to heal the earth.
No.
What I'm seeing in that is,
I'll repeat it. I'll repeat it. So,
but what I'm seeing in that is not necessarily egotism, but I'm not sure what my next step is.
you have a question, or did you just want to say that? Is there a question?
And the question is, yes, we are driven, as you said, we can do it without.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Very good. So I'll try to paraphrase the question so that you all can hear, because I know some of you couldn't hear that. But Irene is asking, she watched an incredible interview with, what was her name?
Diana Kroger.
Diana Beresford Kroger, who is very inspired out of a spiritual impulse, but also a scientific impulse to heal the earth. Yeah. And Irene noticed that the impulses seemed to be very good, but there was just something niggling that somehow she felt like it was our job to heal the earth and alone, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she basically wonders about that. What is that a part of the Christ mind? How is it a part of the Christ mind? Is it a part of the fallen mind? Is that fair? And that's a really good question because these things are not black and white mostly. Yeah. The human being is not black and white. And if we tend to make grand statements and kind of it's either this or that, we're usually somewhere falling to an ideology and not thinking in a living way. Having said that, it's also very true that the Christ mind, for the Christ mind, it's not the job of the human being alone to heal the earth. This is very important. And another statement, she said, we don't want the earth to die. We have to save the earth from dying. Can you see a little bit of the death is the problem in that? Death is the problem. Now, I would hope any one of us would say, well, yeah, me too. I don't want the earth to die. Because then where would we live? But if we deepen ourselves in the gospel, the liturgy, and anthroposophy, the Christ mind can begin to think in us that actually heaven and earth will fall away. The destiny of the earth, as with all humans and all things, is to die. But will that death be cruciform or not is the question. Meaning, the earth herself, if you read the book of Revelation with the right orientation, you can see the earth herself goes through a crucifixion, a kind of death, because the human being is destined to go through a kind of crucifixion. We're connected with the earth intimately. Christ's body is, the earth is becoming Christ's body. He will lead it in this new mind. Christ's suffering and death, his resurrection, his revelation. The point is that the matter of the earth, the material aspect of the earth, will go through a death and fall away. And will also go through a resurrection. So if I think only, and I know there's other questions arising, if I think only, let's preserve the materiality, that's not Christ's mind. And may the materiality be preserved long enough for us to do the work we need to do in the womb. If we blow up the earth now, that's also not good. Yeah, it's a matter of timing, but it's also a matter of seeing death as cruciform. death as only bad is not Christ's mind. Death is the doorway to new life, is the place of resurrection. And heaven and earth will fall away, and a new heaven and a new earth will be born in his word, in his being, in his mind. So these are things, if I was with this person, I would also be encouraging, yes, let's do all that we can that the earth is not destroyed too soon, the material earth. But let's also cultivate the Christ mind that knows this is just a womb for a new creation. And the moral substances that we generate here, the forgiveness, the hope, the peace, the new mind that we actually learn to live, are the building blocks of that new earth. That's the Christ mind. It's not materialistic. It honors, though, that materialism has a role. You see the difference? So, very good question. Ilsa and okay, good. Ilza and then Nicole.
So there has to be room for us to do the good, because we do come to the earth to want to do the good, to better things. I'm thinking of you as the lenker. You could just say, let them fight it out. To bring some healing.
Oh,
And yes.
yes.
So there has to be room for this.
Yeah.
For people, who have not this great blessing of this knowledge. And in the meantime, there are many people in the world who want to do better so that others, fellow human beings, have a better life.
Yeah.
So there has to be room for that. And I think it needs to.
Right? How do we make room? But again, so Ilsa says very, very importantly, there has to be room for the impulse to preserve the materiality of the earth. Yeah, there has to be room for us to make our dramas in the world. Yeah, we've come to the earth for a reason. Yeah. But we also don't want to fall into the mere materialistic thinking. Yeah, that it's just about preserving the materialism or a particular political party or a particular way of life materially. So again, a good way to think about this is material reality is a womb. We need the womb. But someday the placenta will be buried. That's the Christ mind. And very often religious impulses, especially so-called Christian impulses, get totally infected by materialism, where then the state of Israel becomes something we should care about, where then heaven is a material reality, where Christ is going to come again in a material body. These are all not a part of the Christ mind. Good. Nicole. And then Karen. Oh, were you? The hands are popping up. Okay,
I just
Nicole, go ahead.
you had talked about the picture of compost earlier being fun, and I just wanted to offer a little thought that I've come up with in this that
Great.
like walking like a death doula with the earth. I feel like I'm like
Oh,
how because you're talking about the womb, which is also
yeah.
so important, but also like how do we accompany, we've talked about like death isn't the problem, we're accompanying each other. Hi, sweetie, give me a second. How do we walk how do we walk with the earth in this direction?
Beautiful.
And there was one more thing, and then the interruption but
Yeah.
yeah, so death doula was definitely one of them. Oh, also the picture, a little bit of this breaking the perfume over Christ's head,
Oh,
like, and
yes.
everybody's like, oh, that's a lot of money. What are we doing? But like, what are the things that we can do to really, walk with the earth and bring this spirit into the physical world and bring it on this journey. So anoint it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nicole. So absolutely, Mary's breaking of the nard oil over Christ's head and washing his hair with it, that's the Christ mind counterbalancing the fallen mind. The fallen mind says, no, that's a lot of money. You could give that to the poor. It even has a good ideal, the fallen mind. It's not easy. You can't just simply dismiss it as bad thinking. No, it's very intelligent, sometimes good thinking. It's helpful to want to help the earth, but it's not fully Christ anointed because it merely sees the material reality and wants to preserve that. What Mary Magdalene is doing is anointing the death process that it's going to become the place of true life. Nobody else sees it but her. What if we too were like Mary, and every time we see ourselves or someone else who is going, you can see their destiny is leading them through a death and resurrection process, we anoint them. We honor them. We bless them. We don't have to actually pull out some oil necessarily. But what if we inwardly treat them like Christ, as opposed to just telling them, oh, your karma, What if we walked around as death doulas? That's actually our mission. As death doulas. As death doulas. That's a beautiful thought. All of creation is going through a crucifixion. Your biography is taking you through a crucifixion, if you haven't noticed. What if you treated your own self in a process of giving birth through death? That would be putting on the mind of Christ. You see, it's not easy, right? It's very hard. I'm constantly forgetting. And then hopefully I can remember. So there was another question. And then you.
It's only a comment.
Oh, okay. You can practice patience. Comment away,
Comment away.
but not too long.
No, I'm never too long.
Okay.
It's always very.
That's true, Karen. Okay.
Yes. I happened to be in Greece over Easter, and on my morning walk, I came upon a small church, and I entered it, and there was the image of the risen Christ radiating. Nobody else was in there. It was still too early. But the thing is, why are we still seeing always the cross and the Redeemer on the cross? Why not the risen one? Because the certificate, I mean, it was so overwhelming.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, so Karen asked, she has this experience where she goes into this beautiful church and the risen Christ was shining out from the altar. And she asks in a kind of lamenting way, why are we always still focusing on the cross and the crucifixion and not focused on the resurrection? Fair?
That's it.
Yeah. We can honor that too. And yet, like I've said so many times, one cannot be without the other. Yeah. Good. Please.
It's part of this video, and I'm finding that I'm split by what you say and what I heard. Because this woman, I found her quite charismatic, and what she talked about was how beautiful this earth is and how
connected the trees, our need for trees, our need for grasses, and how all of this forms with the universe, the stars and the sky, and how all of this also flows into the oceans and keeps the whales alive, keeps all the fish alive. And if we keep at killing trees, cutting them down, and I guess mining the earth and such, yes, we're killing it. But what is the task, I ask myself, of what the Christ mind is? Can you just let go of that?
No, good question. And I can see it's hard to understand, yeah, what I'm saying. Because with your question, Ellie, at least you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying I'm a bit torn because it seems like you're dismissing what she's doing, Jonah, and saying it's not good. But I see so much good in it. Saving the whales, looking at the cosmos, seeing how the trees interact and the flow and the harmony of life. There?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying either or. I hope you can hear that.
So it's not lucky.
It's not black and white. There's a role of preserving the placenta. Yeah. It's very important that you hear, practice hearing. It's very important. That's why Christ does not change the stones into bread. He sees the role of materialism. He doesn't overcome that yet. But if we just stick with preserving the beauty of Maya, yes, what we see with our senses is ultimately Maya, even though it's beautiful. And we don't break through to the reality, what is the earth actually? What is the earth actually? It's a community of spiritual beings, elemental beings. The earth is a community. Just as you are not your material representation there, you're also a spiritual being that will have many other manifestations. The earth herself is also a community of spiritual beings that are bearing the karmic destiny of Adam. They've been cursed. Remember, God curses the earth as a result of our deed. What does that mean? That means imprisoned in Maya, in a death shell. Paul says all of creation are longing for the sons of God to awaken so that they can be liberated from their death shell, the Ahrimanic materialism. It's not a denial of the earth. It's not an either or. In fact, in this materialism, we're called to liberate, help, and heal the elemental beings, the community of the earth, with Christ. That doesn't mean that I don't also recycle. I also recycle because I want the material world to last long enough, as long as possible, so that we can do this deeper redemptive work at the same time. That's the Christ mind, friends. It's that the materialism of the earth is there like a stage to do deeper work, but it's not the end thing. If we get too in love with the materialistic beauty, we won't break through to the deeper spiritual beauty of these beings. But it's not an either or, it's both and. But the spiritual picture is deeper because heaven and earth will fall away. Just like Christ's material body fell away and the spirit resurrection body rose. That's the image. Everything, including biographies and humanity, are being imprinted, gradually shaped into thus thinks in us Christ suffering and death. And with that, the falling away of matter, resurrection, revelation. The New Jerusalem is not a material entity.
Neither are we.
Yeah. It's a physical, spiritual, not material. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. This is the deepest mystery. That the physical will be wrested free. The spiritual physical will be wrested free from the matter. Matter decays, gets sick, and dissolves. The true form of the New Jerusalem won't get sick, dissolve. It has a form, it has a physicality, but it's not material. Very challenging to think. Just like Christ's new body has a form, but can go through walls, is not any more material. That's the resurrection substance, the resurrection body, the philosopher's stone that is the highest aim, the highest telos of human evolution.
So in the apocalypse, the trees that are in the New Jerusalem are not like our trees.
That's right. So just like in Genesis, before the fall, the stars and the animals, they're not like our stars and animals. The trees of the New Jerusalem are not, that's just an imaginative image. The question becomes, what really is a tree? And remember, the nations don't get healed, the folk's souls. The nation is not the state of Israel, for example, or United States. Spiritually, a nation is a being, an archangel. And they don't get healed until the very end. Healed. That means the nations are sick. Have you noticed?
Say that again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe and you have a question? Okay.
But it's not related to what we were talking about.
Okay.
Information.
A new question. Lydia Marie, we still have 9 minutes.
But you said, why does Christ Jesus take on the pain of the world? And the answer you gave was because he sees the Father doing it.
Mm.
And I'm completely blind as to what that means. I don't quite know what that means. I always thought it was the Christ being, but you see, what does the Father do? Why does you see the Father doing? What?
Taking the pain of the world upon himself? Yeah.
Mhm.
How? Wow. I'm not sure I understand your question.
The answer you gave to that Christ was taking on the pain of the world, why
Yeah.
is he doing it? Because he sees the Father doing it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I don't know how. I don't know what that means, that the Father is taking on the pain of the world. I thought it was the Christ.
I see. Okay. I'll try to say something then. So Lydia Marie's question is, you said at one point in the talk that Christ is taking on the pain of the world. This was connected to Julian of Norwich's perception that the crown of thorns was a symbol of Christ taking on the pain of the world and still standing. Yeah. Steiner also says that the crown of thorns is the capacity to stay standing even when all around you there's really difficult things happening. Like, for example, the burning of the Gertianum. He was able to stand through that and not resign himself. But Lydia Marie's question is, well, if Christ took on the sin of the world and he only does what he sees the Father doing, how is the Father taking on the sins of the world? What is that like? What's he doing? Well, if you remember that Hafiz poem, that Rumi poem, actually, that I said, a few weeks ago. It's a poem where this man wants to embrace God. And he says, well, you're like a mouse wanting to impregnate a lion. And then, are you sure you really want to do that? And then he said, all of God, there's a wound on God's being, and that's all the pain and suffering of humanity. Can you embrace that? He leaves it as a question. Can you embrace that? So that's a poetic way, but it doesn't explain why and how. God himself, maybe a good picture comes out of the Christianity as mystical fact, where Rudolf Steiner shows us in the Egyptian mysteries the picture of Osiris. Osiris as a picture of the Father God, who is chopped up and spread out over all of existence. And you could say his chopped up being is the substance needed for everything else to have its being. The fact that there are a multitude of elemental beings is because the Father allowed his being to be chopped up into all kinds of consciousnesses. And what happens in those consciousnesses? The elemental beings are suffering. Humans are suffering. In a way, the angels are suffering, in as much as we don't fulfill our truest. Rudolf Steiner talks about that in How to Know the Work of the Angels in the Astral Body. The angels actually get formed into adversarial beings if we don't take up the good impulses of Christ. That's a suffering. But remember, all beings have their being in and with the Father. What do we say in our Trinity liturgy? Conscious of our humanity, we feel the Divine Father. He is in all that we are. Our substance is his substance. Our being is his being. That means everything we suffer, he's suffering. He allows himself to be the ground upon which all things occur. And if you look at your life objectively, at least 50% of it is suffering. That means the Father gives himself to this process of suffering. So to speak, he takes the sin of the world upon himself. He allows sin to have a place. Christ is trying to become a new father. By giving himself for the life of the world to being cut up. Is it not true? Very good question. We have time for one more. Yeah, Karen. You're on mute, Karen. Turn your mute off. If you can.
Can't reach her.
Oh, she's getting help right now. Good. Just press the mouse over there by the audio.
Yeah, okay.
There you
So,
go.
right. The statement that I'm after, Jonah, which was very profound and left me in some mental conundrum, at least. Shelter my error. And then you stopped there. You didn't finish the sentence as it goes on at the altar. And the substitution, I think, was made error for evil. In some sense, shelter my evil. The same was,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
And then the fingers were like this. You look at the evil of the other and it's easy. You realize there's three fingers back to you where you're harder to see. But you shelter that too. Is that meaning patience? Because when you finish the statement as it's made at the altar, from streaming round me, in one case it sounds like evil has a place,
Yeah.
your errors have a place, they are the learning ground. But when I finish the sentence, from streaming around me sounds like the solution is I hope it stops streaming around me.
Wow.
Please say
Good.
something, Jonah.
Karen, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to try to repeat it and see if that's right. You just give me a thumbs up if it is. So, what I hear is the question around error and evil. So, you mentioned two places, one in the Advent epistle, where Christ, our salvation, is in grace, sheltering and redeeming our errors, full of mercy in his own divine soul. And you thought maybe that was also evil instead of errors. So but in general, there's this picture that errors and evil need to be here. We're not trying to get rid of them. And at the same time, in the consecration of the human being, when we're in the offering, it says, a wall hinder my error from streaming round me. All evil be taken from my word, and goodwill pour into them. Right?
Mhm.
So it's very astute. Is that fair, Karen? Yeah. It's very astute, this discernment. It's very important that as we get more and more the mind of Christ, that we start to be refined in this way. There is the adversary, the evil, and the error that we're meant to walk with, that is meant to be sheltered, and we're meant to cultivate a relationship with. That's our double, for example. Our double is our ego that we actually perceive in the spirit, that is full of our karmic weaknesses. And we're meant to learn from it so that we can grow. It's a teacher. That needs to be sheltered and redeemed gradually. Yeah. For example, an illness needs to be sheltered until it gives us its gift. Bastien Bon, one of our dear priests, wrote a beautiful poem that speaks of illness and difficulty and suffering as an angel that I need to wrestle with, that I won't let go until it blesses. Yeah? That's a picture of sheltering, redeeming. But what about this all evil be taken from my word? There's an aspect of evil that needs to be lifted, taken, burned away, chopped off, said no to. That has to do with more of the mind aspect. There are certain thoughts that need to be starved out, taken away, unhelpful, as soon as we recognize them. That's the key, though. We have to recognize them. Notice the priest is saying that about their own word. All evil be taken from my words. It's very important. The ego must, for the taken to be good and true, it has to be your own self that recognizes that. Another self can inspire that, but may this be taken has to be from the I. For example, all of these are elements like that. When I start to see I'm thinking that I need to be sufficient, that thought is not helpful. Take that. In other words, the might of the adversary is deception. May you take that from me. It's a deception to just think I am sufficient alone. When do I come to that insight? Well, when I do, then it can be purged out of my own eye with help from Christ. Because I'm confessing to Christ, I'm knowing Him. That's what helps Christ to take the might of the adversary. So the might of the adversary is the false thought. That leads to a false, twisted feeling. That leads to a corrupted behavior. That can be taken. You see, it's actually a very fine distinction. So there's my double that is being transmuted. It's like compost. It becomes medicine. But the unhelpful thoughts and the gradually the unhelpful feelings, I can't take a feeling away, but I can change my thinking. That leads to other feelings gradually. That leads to other behaviors gradually. That's why when we're working in a consultation place, we never say, you shouldn't feel that. We never even approach the will either. The will is sacrosanct. But it's possible to say, my friend, that's not a super helpful thought. And here's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you, Karen. So we have to end, dear friends. I know, oh, Nicole, you had another question, but save it for next time. We'll have one more week next week, and then we'll have a little break. I'm going to go to Harvard too and give a talk, so we'll have to have a break. We may have one just before Christmas. We'll see. So next week we'll begin the crucifixion if we haven't already started. Blessings on your week. Thank you for your attention, dear
Thank you,
friends.
Jonah.
Thank you, Jonah.
Bye-bye.